I'm giving away one WWE World Heavyweight Championship replica belt from WWEshop.com at 100,000 subscribers. All you got to do is click subscribe. Welcome back to the Ango Show. I, of course, am Ango. We got a big one. I want to kick things off with some very interesting news surrounding WWE pay-per-views. I talked about it the other day. WWE is planning a stadium show in Australia early 2024. We know the Royal Rumble is taking place in January. However, at this stage of the game, it seems like WWE, for the second consecutive year, will cancel any plans for a pay-per-view in December. That could always change. WWE can always change their mind. They can always introduce something for NXT if they so choose. But WWE has decided to move forward without planning a pay-per-view in December. Now, keep in mind, BWE did respond to a fan's question. A lot of people were wondering, honestly, this has been a big question now that WWE didn't do one last year. But basically, BWE confirmed that there will be no premium live event on the schedule. Look, here's the thing, right? You got Christmas, you got all these holidays, you got everything going on in December. You got January with Royal Rumble, you got November, which has Survivor Series. I'm not mad at WWE if they choose not to do a pay-per-view at that time. Quite honestly, I think it actually makes a lot of sense. A lot of the wrestlers could kind of enjoy some family time as well. Enjoy the holidays. I don't really see anything wrong with it. It is going to be very interesting, though, to see how WWE builds to the Royal Rumble. Because I remember last year, I somewhat enjoyed the build to the Royal Rumble. How is it going to be this year, having that month break? I feel like WWE will really have to set up some major storylines in advance and then build on it continuously throughout December. But yeah, nonetheless, WWE deciding not to move forward with a pay-per-view in December. And is that a missed opportunity for NXT, by the way? Because NXT has been utilizing like WCW and ECW names for certain events and stuff like that. I feel like December to Dismember could be a thing for NXT, but who knows? Anyways, we're going to keep it moving. Jade Cargill, a lot of talk about Jade Cargill. Obviously, I'm going to keep you guys updated, considering that she's officially signed with WWE. There's been a lot of talk about Jade Cargill and whether or not she's going to the main roster or whether or not she's going to NXT. What really generated a lot of conversation on social media was Dave Meltzer talking about getting the impression that she was going to the main roster. A lot of people are pretty much talking about how Dave Meltzer may or may not really know what is happening here. PW Insider did report that Jade Cargill is currently in Orlando, Florida for WWE. The report added that she is not currently slated to appear live on this week's WWE NXT. You got some people coming out and saying that she's going to be working NXT because she reported to the Performance Center. You're going to have certain people say that she's working the main roster. There's a lot of confusion here. And the way that I look at it is, it's problematic to have this much confusion on the status of somebody signing with the company, especially when she's like that high profile signing. She is, whether or not you want to admit it. I know I've already sparked a little bit of heat from people by saying that Jade Cargill should be on the main roster, but I definitely still stand behind that. I definitely don't change my mind on that whatsoever. I think Jade should be on the main roster. Now, whether or not she works on NXT or not, that's going to be very interesting. I know I read something the other day about Dave Meltzer talking about how Jade Cargill is not getting Becky Lynch or Charlotte Flair money, but she's getting good enough money to where she's going to get a big push. I don't know. I take those types of things with a grain of salt because at the end of the day, WWE is already telling two stories. I know they're bringing in Jade Cargill, but it'll be really interesting to see how they go about it, honestly. Especially with Rhea Ripley building a story right now on Raw. And then, of course, you have Io Sky building a story on SmackDown, and the reality is, like, you don't want to insert her right into the title picture right off the rip, but you definitely want to put her in a big program. Like I said, if it was me, I'm building Charlotte Flair versus Jade Cargill for a WrestleMania 40, but that's just my opinion. Maybe you like it, maybe you dislike it, whatever. Oh, and by the way, just a quick thing about Jade Cargill, because a lot of people seem to not understand this. She could technically work the main roster while still reporting to the Performance Center for training and stuff like that. Just keep that in mind. A lot of people think, oh, she could be on the main roster and she won't have time to train. She won't have time to learn. It's not like Jade Cargill is going to be wrestling a wrestling match every single week. And for the most part, I do think WWE will have her do some squash matches anyways. But in order to really, really develop long term, I just want to make that very clear. She could still work the main roster and then on off days go to Performance Center and learn. I think, one of the I know a lot of people might not like this, but I think if sometimes you feed the person to the wolves, there's certain people out there who could just survive. And I think Jade Cargill would do better than survive. I think she would smoke the wolves, right? She would own that wolf pack. And maybe that's a stupid analogy, but realistically, some people get thrown to the wolves and they get eaten alive, right? And there's some people who make it out. And I think Jade is so good that she'll figure it out no matter how WWE goes about it. I show a lot of confidence in Jade Cargill because I believe Jade Cargill possesses something that a lot of people in AEW didn't necessarily possess. And that brings us to our final story of today's video, guys. WWE morale. This is a very interesting thing because of the WWE merger. And obviously, there is a lot of people who are scared. Obviously, a lot of people are scared about the future of WWE and the company. I think there's a lot of people who are also optimistic that the company will be good. Nick Khan reportedly called for a mandatory meeting on Tuesday, which will be taking place tomorrow, August 19th. PW Insider came out and reported to say that morale among WWE employees has been decimated would be an understatement. They were told it has been a sad morning for some returning to the offices today as they came across empty desks while knowing their coworkers wouldn't be coming back. WWE will need a lot of heavy lifting in the days ahead as divisions are smaller than they were a few days ago. Khan did note in an email Friday that the layoffs were done. Some people in WWE noted that this wouldn't have happened under Stephanie McMahon's watch as the one in charge, but that's hard to say. Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is a lot of people did enjoy working for Stephanie McMahon. That's the reality. Do I think Nick Khan's a bad boss? I don't know. I don't work for him, right? But if I'm looking at this from the perspective of, from the outside looking in, seeing that I worked a job for 10 years at the same place in a leadership role before I decided to become a full-time YouTuber, the one thing I noticed is you built friendships and relationships with the people that you work with. And you could hate your job, but you could love the people you work with. And I think the reality for WWE is, had the merger not be happening, these backstage cuts might have not happened, right? And yeah, the reality is you really, like, if you enjoy working with people and stuff like that, you're going to be pissed off. You're going to be upset. You're going to be sad. But at the end of the day, I always believe that work is not necessarily about friends. I think work is about putting food on the table and getting those hours in to make sure that you could survive and pay your bills and do all that stuff. And then anything extra, you could enjoy the fruits and labors of life. But at the end of the day, with the backstage morale and people being scared and people being maybe a little bit upset and bothered, it's normal. It's normal. It happens in every situation. It doesn't mean it's a good thing. It just means that it's a normal thing. Realistically, I'm more anxious to see what happens on the employee side than the roster side, because I think with the employee side, there's not as many jobs for the employees to go in the wrestling industry. They might have to leave the wrestling industry. If you worked in marketing, your position could help you elsewhere, right? But with the wrestlers, it's like you have AEW, Impact, GCW, MLW, NWA. You have a couple different options, and that's it. It's going to be really interesting to see how things go. But as of right now, morale doesn't seem to be too good. Don't forget, I'm giving away one WWE World Heavyweight Championship replica belt from WWEshop.com at 100,000 subscribers. So go ahead and subscribe today.